One of the trickiest things about being a day trader is knowing which window to trade. So when we're in the rooms and we're trading during my favorite part of the morning, all right, 9:30 to 10:35, so from the bell to 10:35, that by far is the most productive day trading window for me. But I realize that not everyone's going to have access to that day trading window. Or even better, maybe you love to day trade, especially when there's going to be possibly a more significant reaction to a hot zone like the Jackson Hole Symposium. Maybe there's going to be a more significant reaction to a certain stock having had earnings in the morning, and then as we go into the afternoon, some kind of follow through into the close. So how do we play the follow through into the close? Right? That's the first sort of question. So aside from that first AM window, which many of you have seen me trade, the second window for the day is 1:35 Eastern to 3:05. So what's the first thing you might notice? Wait a minute, Rag, you don't trade the closing hour. I don't. When I go back and look at quite literally hundreds, if not thousands of trades over the years, my win rate for 1:35 to 3:05 far exceeds the absolute lunacy sometimes that is the last 60 minutes of the day. All right. So that's one thing. And the second thing then becomes, all right, well then how do we get to work on this? So looking at the NASDAQ, this is an additional window. It's not that this will replace the morning window. This is now the window reopening, right? So for me, the window opens at 9:30, closes at 10:35, and that's been a pretty active hour and 5 minutes. All right. I have not been as active from say 10:35 to 11:30, but I sure hope as we get more macroeconomic and trend clarity, we might be able to open that up again. But for now, most of the time, I'm, as I like to say, pencils down at 10:35. Window reopens at 1:35. And this is when we put the same exact tools back to work. Here's my HPMR. Here's my multi. Do I have a downtrend? I do not. I have a neutral environment. Right? Would I prefer that it was an uptrend? It sure would help. But as long as I'm sitting in a zone of support and price sinks into that zone after 135, we're good. Right? What else am I looking at? And I'm giving you a lot of things here that hopefully you can replicate and put to work on Monday. Right? I'm also above key levels of the previous session's open, high, low, close. Right? So knowing how Thursday's action does have a lot of influence on Friday's action is yet another edge. And I'm really stoked to start maybe getting to the point where we can reopen the afternoon session because, again, it's only another hour. This one's an hour window, 1:35 to 3:05. Whatever then sets up between that window, we can ride into the close. Now, what's the difference? Rather than having to jam a setup, a fill, and follow through, right, into the last 60 minutes of the day and hope that all of that happens before 4 p.m., because I do want to be flat by the end of the day. That's what day trading truly is, right? Now, in the afternoon, we have choices, right? We have choices. And I got to tell you, I actually am not allowed to tell you all yet, but on Wednesday, I'm going to talk about some of the things that we're going to be doing come, mid-September, I believe. We're going to be doing that. I'm trying to think, talking to myself. I believe mid-September. We're going to be adding in different things we can do in the afternoon. All right. A lot of you have been asking about scalping. Right? I don't scalp, but I am going to bring someone who uses my approach. We've been testing this over hundreds of trades for months now. We're going to be adding a scalping approach. This is yet another approach for the afternoon. So we're going to be getting into this on Wednesday. For those of you that haven't checked it out yet, I just want to make sure you all know the link, Wednesday at 8. Let's go back to the chart here. If during this time, and I'm going to put a cutoff here because I'm not interested in a trade that fills after 5 minutes. So there's a cutoff here. At 5 minutes after 3, whatever did or didn't happen, I'm done. That's it. Now, will this work on on NASDAQ futures, S&P futures, whatever. Yeah, it works on anything that will be trading into the close. But it's better to have, so some folks ask, well, Rog, what about gold? Or what about bonds? What about silver, right? The trick to trading the afternoon is one, let's start at 135 and have a trend. But the real trick to the afternoon is have something that's going to have a reaction to the close, so that there is some expectation that psychologically traders are going to have to make a decision into the end of the day. Maybe that decision is short covering. Maybe that decision is going long into the close, right? So we're almost waiting for this little pressure cooker to happen into the close, but rather than engaging within that pressure cooker of the last 60 minutes, we front run that by things that traders are probably already doing, especially if they're moving size before we get to the close, right? A lot of times the best trades into the close are going to trigger earlier. Now, certain stocks are not going to do that, right? I'm just actually scanning right now. Since we're in the room together, we're filming. I mean, this is right here. We're trading through, 331. So the market has not closed yet. But if I've had extreme volatility already, and by the way, this is where the HPMRs once again shine. When this happens, this tells me do not trade, right? So you might say, Rog, Exxon, I wanted to show you all how cool the HPMRs are in not only giving us zones like in NASDAQ, but also telling us to stay away, right? So these are all things we can make a decision about into the close. But notice we're not adding any new tools. We're still relying on multi-trend. We're still relying on HPMRs. We just want this same setup, but in a different window. So this is not necessarily going to replicate or replace the morning. We have to look at the afternoon for what it is. I'll definitely be influenced by what worked earlier in the day, but I've got to go back to the tools that are on my screen and say, hey, what are we seeing after lunch? Is the NASDAQ still really strong, or are we seeing strength out of the Dow? Is tech still really strong, or am I starting to see strength out of financials? Right? All right, let's use financials as another example. Let's do this. I want to make sure I'm really driving this home because I don't want to just grab a well-chosen example. Here's another example. This actually might be even better than the NASDAQ. So do I care if it's the NASDAQ or if it's a heavily weighted sector in the S&P and the Dow? Remember, XLF is number one in the YM future. So if YM is not giving me a setup, XLF might. And really, in essence, it's the same trade. There you go. And actually, this one might even be better because the stochastic was right there down near the low. There's your subsequent trade. Look at when we start scanning 135. That's so important. All right. So if this kind of stuff is kind of cool, we're going to dive into more of this. And we'll be talking about how many of you have been asking, hey, Rog, what about scalping using your tools? I don't scalp, but we're going to get into how we're going to add some scalping, some sessions, some instruction on that. So yeah, I'm really, really excited about that. It's the first time we're doing some of this stuff. All right. That is a look at the post-Powell. The final punchline for Powell is the market is not crashing, even though we are now in a mode of November could actually be a quarter-point hike. So for those of you that were thinking, oh my gosh, if Powell is hawkish, that's the end of the market. No, it's not, because we've been slowly increasing expectations that we could get one more quarter-point hike. And yet, here we are. Even now at 3:34 Friday afternoon, we're still seeing the strength in things like financials. And you might say, Rog, we've just pretty much come full circle. Better than making new lows. It tells us that whatever optimism we might have had, for example, in the Dow, is that getting crushed today? No, we're not making new highs, but gang, we're not making significant new lows either. So let's not get too carried away on the bearish side. Let's shorten the time frames. And remember, as long as I've got a short time frame, I don't need session after session of follow through. I don't need the daily time frame to trend higher or lower like it did in July. I mean, honestly, who cares what July did? It was a completely different month. We're dealing with a level of chop we really haven't seen in a while. And it's very likely we're going to continue to see that because we're still in a lot of macroeconomic murkiness. Yeah? So hope that makes sense. We're going to continue to find a lot of opportunities on shorter term time frames. This is yet another window. Okay, so I hope that helps. Hey traders, Raghee from Simpler Trading. Thank you so much for watching this video. Be sure to leave a like and a comment below. And remember, subscribe and click the bell icon so you'll get notified of the next update. And when you're ready to join me for live trading, be sure to head on over to simplertrading.com. I'll see you in the next update.